I was supposed to be signing a simple family agreement, but the moment I saw my mother's eyes and my sister's fake smile, I understood the truth. They didn't want my approval. They wanted my signature as a shield for their mistakes. And that night, I finally realized I wasn't part of the family. I was the tool they planned to sacrifice. Before I tell you how my family's greed caused their literal collapse, please subscribe. Comment below where you're watching from and let me know your thoughts. Have you ever had to cut off a toxic family member? I'd love to hear your story in the comment section. I'm Morgan, I'm 34 years old, and this is my story. The real story began 2 months earlier, in the silence of a Tuesday afternoon. The air smelled of rot and old timber, thick enough to taste. I adjusted the respirator mask on my face, the rubber seal digging into my skin. I clicked on my high-powered flashlight, the beam cutting through darkness. The crawl space beneath the Victorian floorboards stretched out before me. To anyone else, the house was a masterpiece of 1920s architecture. All crown molding and wraparound porches, the kind you see in magazines. But down here in the belly of the beast, the truth was growing. Slick black patches spread across the support beams like cancer. Stachybotrys tartarum, the toxic black mold that nightmares are made of. It was feeding on moisture from a cracked sewage line. The stench hit me even through the mask, like rotting eggs mixed with wet cardboard. I pulled out my moisture meter, pressing it against the nearest beam. The digital numbers spiked immediately, climbing past 70%. Anything above 20% is considered dangerous. This was a full-scale environmental disaster. I shifted my position, my knee sinking slightly into the damp earth below. The beam I was inspecting felt spongy under my gloved hand. When I pressed harder, black liquid oozed out like pus from a wound. From somewhere deep in the pipes, water dripped in a steady rhythm. Drip, drip, drip. Like a ticking time bomb counting down to catastrophe. I swept the flashlight beam across the ceiling joists above me. The wood fibers were decomposing, hanging in stringy threads. In one corner, the mold had formed a massive colony. It looked almost alive, pulsing and writhing in the harsh white light. My throat felt scratchy despite the respirator. The spores were that concentrated, that aggressive. I took 14 photographs, documenting every angle of the contamination. Then I climbed out of the access panel in the hallway. My white Tyvek suit was covered in black smears and dirt. I peeled it off carefully, sealing it in the hazmat bag. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a notification from my bank. A reminder that my savings account balance was $3,200. The estimate for the repairs sat on my kitchen table upstairs, $150,000. To replace the foundation, remove all contaminated materials, and remediate the mold. I couldn't afford to fix it, which meant I had to sell the land and tear down the legacy. My grandmother had left me this house 3 years ago. I had loved it with every fiber of my being, but I was a home inspector by trade. I knew the difference between character and catastrophe. And this house was drowning. A memory surfaced, sharp and unwelcome. I was 8 years old, standing in a hospital room that smelled of antiseptic. My mother Karen sat in the bed, holding a tiny pink bundle. My new baby sister Bella. I had spent all morning folding origami cranes from colored paper. 12 of them, one for each month Mama had been pregnant. I wanted to give them to her to show her I was happy about the baby. Mama, look what I made for you. I held out the cranes, my hands shaking with excitement. My mother glanced at them, then back at the baby. That's nice, Morgan. Put them on the table. You're a big girl now. You understand Mommy needs to focus on the baby. I placed the cranes on the bedside table, my throat tight. Later that night, a nurse swept them into the trash. Nobody noticed. I learned something that day, sitting alone in that hospital corridor. Love in my family was a limited resource, and I would always be competing for scraps. The front door of the Victorian burst open without warning. Morgan, we're here. Bella's voice rang out, shattering the heavy silence. I walked into the living room to find my mother and sister already inside. They were critiquing the furniture like they owned the place. Bella was 4 months pregnant and glowing in a designer maternity dress, the kind that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Oh, look at these drapes. Bella wrinkled her nose at the hands-embroidered curtains my grandmother had sewn. They smell like old people and dust. We'll definitely have to trash these immediately. She reached out and yanked on the fabric. The sound of tearing stitches echoed through the room like bones breaking. A cloud of dust puffed into the air. My hands clenched into fists at my sides, nails digging into my palms. "Those were Grandma's," I said, my voice muffled as I pulled my mask down around my neck. Bella turned, looking at me with wide, innocent eyes. Zero remorse, just mild annoyance at being interrupted. "Oh, don't be so sentimental, Morgan. You need to update this place if you're ever going to find a husband." The embroidered threads lay scattered on the floor like blood spatter. Red and gold and blue, the colors Grandma had loved. I thought of her arthritic fingers working those stitches for months. And now they were trash. Mother stepped forward, looking around the spacious living room. I could see the calculator running behind her eyes. "We need to talk, Morgan. We've been discussing the baby's future, and we've come to a decision." "A decision?" I asked, feeling the familiar tightening in my chest. The one that always came when they cornered me. "Bella needs this house." Mother stated it flatly, as if she were ordering coffee. "Her condo is too small for a nursery. And this place has 4 bedrooms, just gathering dust with you." I stared at them, wiping a smudge of dirt from my cheek. "This house isn't safe." I started to explain, trying to keep the technical panic out of my voice. "I'm actually preparing to list it as 8 teardown. The foundation is compromised, and there's toxic mold growing in the crawl space." Bella groaned, throwing her head back in theatrical exhaustion. Here we go with the technical mumbo-jumbo. Always trying to sound so smart and important. "It's a house, Morgan. It has walls and a roof. It's not a science experiment. I'm a home inspector, Bella. It literally is a science experiment tome, and this one is failing every test." Mother crossed her arms, her diamond bracelets clinking together. The sharp metallic sound made me flinch. "Stop making excuses to keep your sister down. You're just jealous because she's building a family and you're still alone." The word hung in the air, heavy and pointed, designed to strike at the deepest insecurity they thought I had. "We have a proposal," Mother continued, smoothing down the front of her blazer. "You swap houses with Bella. She gets the Victorian for the baby, and you get her modern condo downtown. It's an even trade. Actually, you're getting the better deal. Her condo has a higher market value per square foot." I almost laughed at the absurdity of it, at the sheer audacity of their demand. "You want to trade a customized modern condo for a 100-year-old money pit? I want my grandchild to grow up in a home with history and a yard," Mother said, her voice turning cold. "Not a concrete box. And since you have a productivity problem with your womb, you don't need this space." The words hit me like a physical blow. My breath caught in my throat, and for a moment, the room spun. 3 years ago, I had been 12 weeks pregnant. I had told no one, waiting for the safe 2nd trimester. Then one morning, I woke up bleeding. The doctor at the ER had been kind but clinical. "Sometimes these things just happen," she had said. "You may have difficulty conceiving again." I never told my family, because I knew deep in my bones that they would see it as proof. Proof that I was defective, broken, less than. And here was my mother weaponizing my silence, turning my private grief into a public judgment. I looked at Bella, expecting her to defend me, but she was just scrolling on her phone, bored. "It's true, Morgan," she said without looking up. "It's wasteful for you to hoard this place when I'm actually doing something with my life." The anger didn't flare up hot and explosive. Instead, it turned cold and hard in my stomach. They didn't care about my expertise. They didn't care about the reality of the structure. They only cared about the aesthetic, the Instagram photos. I looked down at the floorboards, knowing exactly what was festering just inches below the polished wood. If I told them no, I would be the villain, the bitter older sister who denied a pregnant woman a home. But if I told them yes, well, they would get exactly what they were asking for. "I need to think about it," I said quietly, my mind already racing through legal implications. "Don't take too long," Mother snapped, heading for the door. "We're bringing a realtor by on Friday to drop the paperwork. Don't embarrass us by being difficult." They left, and I stood alone in the living room. The torn curtain fluttered in the breeze from the open door. I walked to the window and looked out at the garden. Another memory came flooding back, this one warmer. I was 15, buried in SAT prep books at the kitchen table. Bella was 7, running through the backyard in her favorite yellow dress. She stopped suddenly, crouching down in the grass. When she came running inside, her hands were full of dandelions. The stems were crushed and leaking milky sap. Her hands were covered in dirt and grass stains. "Sissy, look!" She held them out to me, grinning with gap-toothed joy. "These are for you, because you're always studying and you look sad." I had taken them, my heart swelling. For just a moment, I had felt seen, loved. "Thank you, Bella Bean." I had put them in a cup of water on the table. That night, after Bella went to bed, I heard my mother on the phone. She was talking to her sister, laughing. Bella is such a sweet child, so thoughtful. Nothing like Morgan, who's always got her nose in a book. So difficult, that one. Bella just wants to make everyone happy. I had looked at the dandelions wilting in the cup and realized my mother would always find a way to turn my sister's love into my failure. Now, standing in the living room, I understood something else. Bella hadn't become a monster overnight. She had been carefully cultivated into one by a mother who taught her that kindness was optional and that Morgan's feelings didn't matter. Friday arrived with gray skies and a sleek black Mercedes pulling into the driveway. The driveway that was already crumbling, another sign of the foundation issues below. The realtor, a woman named Sharon, stepped out with a clipboard. She was one of Mother's bridge partners, all fake smiles and designer heels. She walked through the house in exactly 10 minutes, never once looking at the ceiling, the basement, or the utility room. Beautiful bones, simply stunning. Sharon chirped, tapping her pen against her teeth. I'd appraise this at $800,000 easily, considering the historic charm. I stood by the fireplace, my arms crossed, watching this farce unfold like a bad play. "Sharon, did you check the subflooring in the kitchen? What about the moisture levels in the east wing?" Mother stepped in front of me, blocking my view of the realtor. "She doesn't need to check every little crack, Morgan. We're doing a family transfer, not a federal investigation." Sharon nodded in agreement, pulling a folder from her designer bag. "Exactly. Since it's an inter-family swap, we can bypass standard inspections. It'll speed things up considerably." "That's dangerous," I said, looking directly at Bella. She was already measuring the corner for a crib with her hands. "There are serious issues with this house that need addressing before a baby lives here." Bella spun around, her eyes filling with instant, weaponized tears. "Why do you hate me?" She sobbed, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "You just don't want me to have the house because you're miserable." "You want me to be miserable too." Mother rushed to her side, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. She glared at me with pure venom. "Look what you've done, stressing out a pregnant woman." "You are selfish, Morgan, absolutely selfish. Holding on to a rotting asset when your sister needs stability." The irony of her calling the house a rotting asset wasn't lost on me. She was accidentally telling the truth while still missing the point. "Fine," I said, the decision crystallizing in my mind like ice. "If you want the house so badly, you can have it." Bella stopped crying instantly. A triumphant smile broke through the tears like sun through clouds. "Really? You mean it?" "Yes, but we do this my way, with full legal documentation." Mother waved her hand dismissively. "As long as you sign the deed over by the end of the month, I don't care. We're going to do a simple swap, your deed for hers, and we'll value the transaction at $1 for tax purposes." My ears perked up at that. Tax fraud on top of coercion. They were digging their own grave deeper by the minute. I went to see Silas that evening. He was the old master craftsman who had taught me everything about restoration. His workshop smelled of sawdust and linseed oil, comforting and real. He listened to my story, his weathered hands never stopping their work. "So they want the shell, but won't listen to the warning about the core?" Silas asked, rubbing his bearded chin. "They think I'm lying to keep the house for myself." "Then let them have it," Silas said, picking up a chisel and testing its edge against his thumb. "Some lessons can only be learned when the roof falls in on your head. But you protect yourself, Morgan. Make sure they sign away their right to blame you." He looked up at me, his eyes serious. "Your grandmother would want you to save yourself, not the house." "I know," I said quietly. "She told me once that a house is just wood and stone. That home is the piece you build inside yourself." "Then build your piece, girl." Silas handed me a small wooden box. Inside was a fountain pen, elegant and old. "This was your grandmother's. She used it to sign the deed when she bought that house 60 years ago. She wanted you to have it for important documents. Use it wisely. I held the pen, feeling the weight of history in my hand. Thank you, Silas. I spent the next 3 days compiling what I called the Book of Doom. Every mold test, every structural assessment, every photograph, every quote for the $150,000 in repairs. I organized it all into a binder with bright red tabs. Impossible to miss, impossible to ignore. I also drafted a specific document, an as-is addendum. It was far more detailed than a standard real estate contract. It stated clearly that the buyer waived all inspections, that they accepted the property with all faults known and unknown, that they released the seller from any future liability. It was a shield, forged in the fires of their own impatience. The night before the signing, I sat at my grandmother's desk, the one where she used to write letters in her careful script. I opened her old diary, the leather cover worn soft with age. I found the entry I was looking for, dated 3 years before she died. Morgan came to visit today, she had written. She's the only one who understands this house, who sees beyond the pretty wallpaper. Karen only sees dollar signs, and that child Bella sees a backdrop for photographs. But Morgan sees the bones, the heart, the truth. I worry that her kindness will be her weakness. I hope she learns that peace is worth more than approval. I traced the words with my finger, my vision blurring with tears. One drop fell on the page, smudging the ink slightly. I understand now, Grandma. I whispered to the empty room. I understand what you are trying to teach me. The signing took place at my kitchen island, the same scene I described at the beginning of this story. I placed the binder on the table, their tabs screaming for attention. Before we sign the final transfer deeds, I need you to look at this. I pushed the binder toward Bella. This details the current condition of the foundation and the environmental hazards. Bella didn't even touch it. She used her manicured fingernail to flick it away like trash. I don't want to see your negativity, Morgan. I'm manifesting positive energy for this birth. Mother chimed in, checking her Rolex watch. We don't have time for your lectures. The notary will be here in 5 minutes. I pulled out my phone and set it on the counter, propped it up against a fruit bowl with a camera facing them. Just for my records, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I want to confirm that you are refusing to review the inspection report. Oh my God, yes, we refuse. Bella shouted at the phone camera. She even posed slightly, tilting her head for a better angle. We know the house is old. We know it needs paint. We don't care about your little made-up problems. The notary arrived, a middle-aged man named Harold. He looked uncomfortable as he read through the documents. When he got to the as-is waiver, he paused. Miss Anderson, are you certain about this? He looked at Bella with concern. This document is quite comprehensive in releasing the seller from liability. You're accepting the property without any inspection whatsoever. We're family, Bella said breezily, rubbing her belly. We don't need all that warm nonsense. Harold looked at me, and I saw pity in his eyes. He understood exactly what was happening, but he couldn't stop it if both parties agreed. Okay, then this is the waiver of disclosure and inspection, I said, pulling out the document I had prepared. It states that you have been offered full disclosure of defects, but have chosen to decline the information. It also states that you accept the property as is, and release me from any future liability for repairs or health issues. Mother snatched the pen from Harold's hand, her eyes gleaming with the victory she thought she had won. This is ridiculous. Family doesn't sue family. But if it shuts you up, we'll sign. She signed her name with a flourish, then passed my grandmother's fountain pen to Bella. I had deliberately used that pen for this moment. Bella signed with a little heart over the I in her name. She was laughing as she did it. There, happy? Now give me the keys. Harold witnessed the signatures, his face grave. He knew he was watching a slow-motion car crash. I watched the ink dry on the document, feeling a strange mixture of relief and profound sadness. They were signing their own warrant, and they were so arrogant they thought it was a prize. I handed over the heavy brass key to the front door. The metal was warm from my pocket. It's all yours, I said. I suggest you check the basement first. One last weak attempt at a warning. Bella grabbed the key and immediately held it up for her phone. She was already filming an Instagram story. #new homeowner, #Victorian dream, #bye bye condo. She narrated to her phone screen, her voice syrupy with fake excitement. I picked up my binder, the one they refused to read. I slipped it into my bag along with the signed waiver and the deed to Bella's condo, now legally mine. You have 48 hours to vacate the condo, I said, turning to leave. Yeah, whatever, Mother said, already measuring the windows for new treatments. Just get your junk out of here so we can start the renovations. I walked out of the house that had been in my family for 3 generations, and I didn't look back, not even once. The move was surgical and swift. I hired professional movers, but gave them specific instructions. Leave almost everything behind. The furniture, the rugs, the mattresses, they were all potentially contaminated with mold spores. I wasn't going to infect my new life with the rot of the old one. I took only my clothes, which I had professionally laundered, and a small metal box containing my grandmother's diary, the fountain pen Silas had given me, and the antique tools I had collected over the years. Bella texted me asking why I was leaving the furniture. I replied simply, "It doesn't fit my style." She texted back, "Thanks, at least you did one nice thing." I stared at that message for a long time, marveling at how she could see generosity in what was actually self-preservation. I drove straight to the condo downtown, a sleek glass box on the 15th floor. It was sterile, white, and completely devoid of character. Exactly what Bella loved, exactly what I couldn't stand. But I didn't even unpack my suitcase. I had already arranged a meeting with a cash investor, someone who specialized in luxury condos in hot markets. The market was on fire, and I was willing to sell below value for speed. I sold Bella's condo exactly 24 hours after the deed transferred to my name. The money hit my account the next morning. $450,000, tax-free due to the swap structure. I didn't stay in the city. I drove 4 hours north to a small town Silas had recommended. There was a stone cottage there, built in the 1800s. It needed work, the roof especially. But the foundation was solid granite, built to last centuries. It cost me $200,000, leaving me with $250,000 as a safety net. Enough to start my own independent inspection firm. I changed my phone number that same day, blocked them on all social media platforms, and vanished. For a month, silence reigned. I spent my days scraping old paint and pointing stonework, breathing in the clean, crisp mountain air. I felt lighter than I had in years, the burden of the rotting Victorian no longer crushing my chest. I slept through the night for the first time in months. No nightmares about collapsing ceilings or toxic air. But you can't outrun a storm when you're the one who drew the map. I heard about the disaster through a mutual friend named Rachel. She called me in a panic one afternoon. "Did you see Bella's Instagram live?" Rachel asked, her voice breathless. "No, I blocked her, remember?" "You need to unblock her, Morgan." "It's catastrophic. You need to see this." I opened my laptop and created a burner account. I navigated to Bella's profile. The most recent post was a chaotic, shaky video, filmed from the driveway of the Victorian house. Blue and red lights flashed in the background. Ambulances, fire trucks, police cars. Bella was screaming, covered in dust and black grime. She was holding a towel over her mouth and nose. Behind her, I could see the front wall of the house. It was partially collapsed. I scrolled back through her post to piece together what had happened. She had hosted a massive gender reveal party. 50 people crammed into the living room. To create a feature wall for photographs, she had hired a handyman. His job was to remove the plaster on the main bearing wall. The video from the party showed the moment perfectly. Bella stood with a sledgehammer, looking cute for the camera, wearing a pink dress that said he or she. She took a swing at the drywall. The wall didn't just break. It disintegrated. A massive section of the ceiling, unsupported and rotted through, collapsed. But it wasn't just debris that fell. A cloud of black dust exploded outward like a bomb, followed by a slurry of dark, sludge-like water from the burst pipe. The video showed guests screaming, running for the doors. People were slipping in the mold-contaminated water, covering their faces as the black spores filled the air like smoke. Children were crying, someone was vomiting. The camera fell to the ground, still recording. All you could see were feet running, chaos. The caption on the latest post read, "My house tried to kill me. #sue everyone." The paramedics had evacuated everyone. The mold concentration was immediately dangerous to life and health. The house had been red tagged by the city within hours. Uninhabitable. Condemned. Then came the second video. The one that made my blood run cold and hot at the same time. It was Bella sitting in a hospital bed. She was wearing an oxygen mask, her eyes red and swollen. She held up a piece of paper she had found in the debris. It was the title page of my binder, the one she had kicked under the sofa. Danger. Do not inhabit. Severe fungal contamination. The timestamp on the report was clearly visible, dated 3 months prior to the swap. My sister knew! Bella shrieked at the camera, her voice hoarse. She knew the house was poison, and she tricked me. She tricked me into trading my condo for this death trap. She tried to kill my baby. The comments were a mixture of sympathy for her and vitriol toward me. What a monster sister, one user wrote. She should be in jail, wrote another. Lawsuit time, get every penny, wrote a third. I closed the laptop, my hand shaking. Not from fear, but from the sheer predictability of it all. They found the truth I had tried to give them, but they only found it after the walls came down. Would you have warned them one last time? Or did they get exactly what they deserved? Let me know in the comments. The confrontation happened 3 days later. My new address wasn't easy to find, but Mother had hired a private investigator. I was in the garden, planting hydrangeas. My hands were covered in rich, clean soil, when their SUV screeched up the gravel driveway. Mother, Bella, and my father stormed out of the car. Father usually stayed out of these things. His presence meant they thought they had a real case. Bella was wearing a surgical mask, her eyes wild with rage. Mother was waving a stack of legal papers. You evil, manipulative little witch, Mother screamed, marching through my gate without permission. You nearly killed your sister. You knew that house was infested. I stood up slowly, brushing the soil from my knees. I picked up my tablet from the patio table. I didn't yell back, didn't panic. I just waited. We are suing you for everything. Father shouted, his face red with anger. Fraud, negligence, endangerment of a minor. $1.5 million. Bella screamed through her mask. You ruined my life. I'm homeless. I have to live in Mom's basement because of you. I let them scream until they ran out of breath. The silence of the mountain swallowed their noise. Birds chirped in the trees. A breeze rustled through the pines. Are you done? I asked calmly. No, we are not done until you write a check. Mother spat, her face twisted with fury. I tapped the screen of my tablet. I don't think I'll be writing any checks, I said, my voice steady. But I think you should watch this before you call your lawyer. I turned the screen toward them and pressed play. It was the video from the kitchen island, the day of the signing. Bella's voice rang out, clear and arrogant. Oh my God, yes, we refuse. We know the house is old. We don't care about your little made-up problems. Then the shot of the document. Waiver of disclosure and inspection. Harold the notary reading it aloud. And finally, the shot of Bella kicking the binder. The same binder she had found in the rubble. The color drained from Mother's face so fast, she looked like a ghost. Bella stared at the screen, her mouth opening and closing. Father took a step backward, his anger deflating. I turned the tablet off. You refused the inspection, I said, my voice hard as the granite beneath our feet. You signed a waiver stating you accepted all faults, known and unknown. You are on video mocking the very warnings you now claim I hid from you. That doesn't hold up. Father stammered, though he looked unsure. Actually, it does, I replied, especially since I also have the original emails. I offered to show you the report 3 separate times. You declined each time. I swiped to show them the email thread on my tablet. But there's one more thing, I added, leaning against the stone wall of my cottage. If you sue me, we'll have to go through full discovery in court. And that means the IRS will be very interested in something. The $1 valuation you placed on the swap deeds to avoid taxes. I pulled up a photo of the transfer document they had prepared. Tax fraud is a felony, Mother, I said softly. And since you are the one who insisted on that valuation, the audit will be thorough. The IRS doesn't care about family drama. They care about $800,000 in unreported gains. The silence that followed was absolute. The wind rustled through the pine trees. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk cried. Mother looked at father, then at Bella. She knew, finally, that she had walked into a trap of her own making. Bella started to cry, but it was a quiet, defeated sobbing this time. But where am I going to live? She whispered. The baby is coming in 5 months. You have a family, I said, gesturing to our parents. I'm sure they'll support you. After all, that's what families do, right? Now get off my property. Mother's face twisted with something I had never seen before. Not anger, not superiority. It was fear. You were always cold, Morgan, she said, her voice shaking. Even as a child, you were difficult. You never needed anyone. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw her clearly for the first time. Not as my mother, not as an authority figure, just as a woman who had measured her worth in her children's achievements and found herself bankrupt. I did need someone, Mom, I said quietly. I needed you. I needed you to see me, to love me without conditions. But you taught me that love is transactional in this family. So here's my transaction. Stay away. They retreated to their car like beaten dogs. The arrogance completely stripped away. I watched them drive off, dust swirling in their wake. And I felt a profound sense of finality. I hadn't won a game. I had simply refused to play by their rules anymore. That evening, Silas came over to help me install a new mantle. We worked in comfortable silence, the rhythm of hammers and wood filling the cozy room. So they came? Silas asked, fitting a joint together with practiced ease. They came, I answered, handing him a nail. And they left. Silas nodded, a small smile appearing in his beard. Good, the foundation held. I looked around my small, sturdy cottage. It wasn't a Victorian mansion. It wasn't a luxury condo. It was humble and it needed work, but it was solid. And most importantly, it was mine. I sat by the fire later that night, opening my grandmother's diary to the page I had bookmarked. A house is just wood and stone, she had written. Home is a piece you build inside yourself. Never let them take your peace, Morgan. Your worth is not measured by what you give them. It's measured by what you keep for yourself. I closed the book and watched the flames dance in the fireplace. The firelight reflected off the solid stone walls, casting warm shadows that felt like embraces. Bella had the Victorian shell, now condemned and rotting. Mother had her pride, now shattered by her own greed. Father had his righteousness, now exposed as hollow. And I had the truth. I had my peace. Sometimes the only way to save yourself is simple. Let the people who drag you down hold on to the heavy things they desperately want. Don't fight them for the anchor. Just let go and swim to shore. I didn't hate them anymore. I just didn't need them. And looking at the firelight, I knew Iniver would again. The last I heard, they're still trying to find a lawyer who will take their case. Good luck with that. If you enjoyed this story of standing up to family greed, please hit that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you have given them one more warning? Or is there a point where people's choices become their own responsibility? Have you ever had to walk away from toxic family members? How did you find your peace? Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Thanks for watching, and remember, your peace is worth more than their approval.